uppercut, try to hit me in the gut, thinking that I won't react. You whisper in my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, pulling the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home, begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating. Yeah, my legend's written in the stone. Yeah, you're crying age in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, pulling the sound of my name in the crowd.
Our favorite hobbies. Hello, hello, and welcome everyone to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter, our co-host for the day, only because I can't replace him at this late hour. Is Xandering, who's is just, you know what, for that conversation, just like right before we went live, I need to give Titan the ability to mod hosts. Oh no, that's actually a really bad idea. I'm not going to give Titan the ability to mod hosts. That's a bad idea. I'll have to figure it out. How are you, Xandering?
Yeah, you're just screwed.
I am. Yeah,
it's like I'm like a lost cat. You found me, you took me home, and now you're stuck with me.
Yeah, now you're shredding on the carpet and peeing on everything. Thanks. No, I wish.
Absolutely.
You're nice to everybody else. You're like a sweetheart. Everyone was just like, oh, he's the nicest guy. I was just like, yeah. He said I made Noah look young. Oh, that's what he's talking about. Like 2 seconds before the show goes live, he hits me with that, and I can't respond because it's like, hi, everybody, we're live. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, you love me anyway.
I do. I don't know why. Well, probably because I'm a masochist. I think it's probably why it's diagnosed. So, oh Jesus. So, all right.
Gotta be. I mean,
yeah. What? I'm in YouTube.
It's gotta be.
Yeah. So
when you look at all the things I believe in, and your rant last night at the beginning of the show, I noticed you do that when I'm not here.
yeah. I said the gun rant when you're. Oh. Hey, you and I are more than. No, that's true. I had it. I absolutely had it with that. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna. Yep. I had to get that off my chest. Well, maybe sometime we'll do another discussion about it. It's one of the only really, discussions that moved me at all and I thought was productive. So we'll have another one. But I stand by that argument, which is I think one of the only ones you found compelling, which was the here are the odds. If you have the gun, this is what you're much more likely to kill somebody you care about than kill a stranger. It's just that's how guns are being used. That's why I think if I'm not putting words in your mouth, your argument was, okay, fine. If you get rid of all of them, then maybe it's a good idea for that very reason. But if you can't, then you're not armed against criminals who are, because we like our criminals armed. We like to give them a fighting chance against the cops.
Well, yeah, and of course, it makes sense that if you own a gun, considering the actual crime rates in the United States, how often are you going to actually come across a violent criminal with an actual firearm? Not very often for most people. But if you own a gun, how many times are you going to come into contact, or your family going to come into contact with the gun? Obviously, every day. So it's not a big stretch to think that, well, if you have a gun, then you're probably more likely to hurt somebody with it in your own family than you are to actually shoot a home intruder or something. Yep, which is where personal responsibility comes in. If you're going to own a gun, you better go get training and better know how to use it. You better have proper storage for it.
Yeah, but only a fool would actually argue that with you, so I waited until I had Joe on to do that, as you pointed out. All right.
Yeah. Anyway. So, how's your COVID recovery going?
Well, I'm sick again. I'm hoping it's not COVID, but I've had long haul, as you know, and intermittently I have these short-term memory losses, and it seems to be kicking back in. So I'm kind of wondering if I've got it, but if I've got it, because I'm sick with something, maybe it may not. It's not affecting me terribly, but I'm definitely under the weather, and the long haul is coming back. And as you know, the long haul causes short-term memory loss, which is a bit of a problem because I've been suffering that for. I'm just kidding. It does cause memory problems, but not quite that bad. Pretty close. I've had literally, and my wife will tell you, I've literally had more than once where I'll tell her something at the beginning of the day, and a few hours later I'll say, "Oh, by the way, I wanted to talk to you about this." And she goes, "Other than what you just told me?" I said, "Well, I didn't tell you anything." She goes, "Yeah, we had this whole conversation a couple hours ago." And that's happened several times. It hasn't happened recently. It hasn't happened in the last couple of weeks, but it's been happening. Anyway, that's me and COVID. How about you?
Well, I went to go get some more allergy meds because I don't know if I've ever mentioned it online, but I've got some weird autoimmune thing where I get hives and stuff. So the normal over-the-counter stuff wasn't really working. So they gave me some prednisone. Well, they want to do some testing and actually see me before they give me more prednisone because it's got quite a lot of side effects.
Yep.
So I went in, and of course, every time you go into the medical clinic, what is the first thing they do? They scratch your brain with a swab.
Yeah.
So they scratched my brain with a swab and came back like, I don't know, 20 minutes or something like that later when doc came in and said, "Hey, by the way, do you know you're COVID positive?" I'm like,
that's how they break it to you, by the way.
Do you have any of
to know?
Yeah. It's like, do you have any of these symptoms? I mean, you seem perfectly fine. And I was like, well, I guess I got a little bit of congestion. That's kind of it. I mean, maybe it was just a dusty day. I don't know. I feel fine. They're like, "Oh, yeah, well, your test came back positive for COVID, so you might want to, quarantine." Of course, going into the medical place, I already had to have a big mask and stuff on anyway. So yeah, I was like, "Oh, I found that out yesterday." So I was like, "Huh, well, that's interesting. I wonder if I'm going to get sick or not."
How you feeling?
I still feel fine. Still a little bit of congestion, and I otherwise feel perfectly normal. Except for earlier today when I got my coffee and was trying to figure out why the coffee wasn't strong enough until I realized that I just couldn't taste the coffee at all. It didn't taste watery. It didn't taste strong. It didn't taste nothing. That's very bizarre.
Wow. That's my eldest had that. When the COVID hit my family, it hit all of us. My wife was sick for about 4 or 5 minutes. My daughter were each sick for about an hour, and but my eldest couldn't taste anything for several days, and me. Everybody remembers me. That was not a good time. So that was basically the only reason they didn't put me in the hospital was because there was no room. So, but I came out okay. So everything's good. They had COVID too, which was really bizarre. But short of that, everybody was okay. All right. Well,
yeah, it's kind of. I mean, it's considering what I do. And the fact that I've been doing it for, I got vaccinated. I had an allergy reaction to it, so I won't be getting any boosters or anything. But considering what I do for a living and the fact that I've been back and forth across this country, dozens of times in the past year and a half, the fact that it took me this long to catch it.
Yeah, it's kind of.
I guess I wash my hands more than average.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. All right, well, definitely,
Enough about us.
stay in touch. Yeah. We got our guest in the back, and he's waiting patiently. Before we do start, though, I do want to let everyone know, just because this is something we've been following. Historic winds gusting as high as 115 miles per hour have been feeding wildfires, which have forced the evacuation of several towns near Boulder, Colorado. Louisville and Superior are among those evacuated. Over 35,000 people have been displaced. There's a state of emergency. 911 lines are flooded, and they can't even answer 911 anymore. So many people are calling about the fires. They've evacuated now multiple hospitals, which were unfortunately already overwhelmed because of COVID. So we'll keep an eye on that. But it is historic winds. It's between the historic winds, the historic snow. It's, we're facing historic climate changes and COVID at the same time. It's a pretty interesting. Yeah, so we'll stay on time. If we have to, we'll do an overtime for that. We're not going to really discuss that here, but we are staying on that, and that's on our Discord if anybody wants to join there. And our live chat appears not to be up on the bottom window, so I'll deal with that in a minute. Yes.
The archaeologist people got it wrong when they were interpreting the Mayan calendar. It didn't end in 2012. It actually ended right at the beginning of 2022. They transposed that 1. It was supposed to have been a 2, and they thought it was a 1. So really, everything's supposed to end in 2022. And go watch the movie 2012, and you'll see how it all ends.
It's a future documentary, I guess. All right. Well, so today we are going to be discussing what's happening between Russia and the Ukraine. Now, all of us know, and we have some idea, we've talked about it before, but we've never really had on a military expert to discuss it with us. And so we are lucky to have on Commander Lance McMillan with us, and I'll bring him out in a minute. But in 2014, in what would be known as the Revolution of Dignity, or the Maidan Revolution, Ukraine, a former Soviet state, deposed their pro-Russian president, Viktor Yanukovych. He was deposed and exiled into Russia. And hold on one second. They essentially, they were already presumably free from Russia, but Russia responded and seized and then annexed the southern Crimea Peninsula from Ukraine and began backing separatist eastern rebels who captured large swaths of Ukraine's 2 eastern regions, collectively known as the Donbass. In July 2021, Putin called Russians and Ukrainians one nation and said that the Ukraine was running a, quote, anti-Russian project. Russia has repeatedly run military exercises along the Ukraine border. They've denied in the past any invasion plans while moving troops into what appears to be a hostile invading force, doing exercises along the border. Russia has now amassed the largest troop buildup yet on the border, with over 100,000 troops, and appears to be mobilizing logistical support for an invasion, causing a number of people to speculate that this is more than saber rattling, that they're actually planning an invasion in early next year, probably by the end of January. Others say that it is, in fact, just a way to get concessions from NATO and the West, or to appease elements of his own administration. Putin has made a number of demands, in essence demanding that NATO return to its pre-1997 borders. They want NATO to stop expanding further east, especially into former Soviet states like Ukraine and Georgia. They want guarantees that there will be no alliance between NATO and these countries, and especially not between NATO and Ukraine. They want NATO to abandon all military activity in Eastern Europe, which would mean pulling all of the NATO combat units out of Poland and the Baltic republics of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. They want guarantees that NATO will not deploy missiles in any of those countries, in countries like Poland and Romania. These are all basically non-starters. NATO is going to ally with Ukraine if it wants to. It's going to keep working with Poland and all of these other countries. So Russia must have known this was a non-starter. Is this a way to justify an invasion, or is this just more saber rattling? So again, with us today to help us make sense of some of what's going on, Commander Lance McMillan. Commander McMillan, thank you for joining us. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, starting with when you first joined the Navy, and just tell us a little bit about who you are?
Well, I will start before I joined the Navy, because I think some of it is pertinent.
Absolutely, please.
I was the son of a U.S. diplomat, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. And I grew up mostly overseas in various countries like Egypt, Turkey, Greece, India, and Japan. Met with and socialized with lots of foreign dignitaries and officials. When I was in high school in Turkey, I had a standing invitation from the KGB resident to come to the Russian embassy whenever I wanted to see war films, because he knew I was really into military history. So I dutifully walked down to the embassy, which was about 2 blocks from my home, and they'd meet me at the door and escort me in, and they'd sit the GRU officer next to me, and he'd translate what was going on. So I'm fairly familiar with a lot of the way international life works. Anyway, I joined the Navy in 1980, got my commission via OCS. After that, I served on various ships for the first 12 years of my career. Very unusual. Most people alternate sea duty with shore duty. I just kept going back to sea and back to sea because I enjoyed it so much. Among other things, my specialty areas were in amphibious operations and operational logistics. I was an attendee at the Naval War College in 1994, where I got highest honors in my class. I attended the Staff and Command College in Roanoke, Virginia in 1998. And was designated a joint service officer, which means I worked extensively with Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, even Coast Guard positions. And that's pretty much what my military career consisted of. Since retiring, I've basically been working on designing and developing historical simulations.
If you don't mind my asking, did you ever actually learn any Russian?
No. I have a complete ineptitude with foreign languages. I can embarrass myself slightly in French after taking French in high school and college for a total of 6 years. And beyond that, I can, like order food at a restaurant in Turkey or Greece, and that's about it.
My father practiced law in 6 languages, but his claim to fame was once being in a French restaurant and ordering my stepmother a gorgeous order of French hooker. That was his claim to fame. So, to which, by the way, they didn't say no; they just double checked before filling the order. But at any rate,
Monsieur Schulz, that's what he wants.
yeah. Oh, dear Lord. All right. Well, I always ask. I never miss an opportunity to at least speak some Russian if somebody's got it. But all right. Well, so we did a...
My dad does speak fairly fluent Russian.
Oh, all right. Well,
I am so sorry. I'm such a bore that I don't speak Russian for you.
Yeah, I know. Well, I managed to struggle on anyway. It's a challenge, but I do my best. Listen, don't worry. I mean, I speak Russian at you all the time. It's just you don't understand what I'm saying. At least I really hope you don't. It's just, I'm going to be in trouble if it turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it turns out you've been holding that up to the phone up to the thing this whole time, I'm going to be in trouble. Oh, dear Lord. All right. Well, so we've discussed, I think by this point, we have a common understanding of where we are. Most of the people that I've heard that say that they are advisors to Biden, I don't know. I'm always a little suspicious because when somebody high up says, well, this is what the head of the CIA is saying, or this is what the head of, I'm like, okay, is this just what they want me to think they're saying, or is this what they're actually saying? Because I have a hard time believing that they're really always going to tell us exactly what it is that they're saying, because they know that gets out to everybody. But
sure.
the general consensus, as I understand it, is that this time he's legit, straight up for real, and that he is in fact planning on invading, and that in fact he's already made up his mind, and he's going to do it. And this laundry list of demands that he knows we will never capitulate to was really just an excuse for a pretext to go in. So what are your thoughts, sir, looking at this situation? Having now, again, you're not an expert specifically in the Ukraine, but you have gone to the War College, you've studied military strategy, and you have some idea for how enemies of this country, who I think we can call them an enemy of this country, especially since they've been tampering with our elections, and how it is they operate, and they're a foreign military power. So sort of with that understanding in mind and those limitations, if that sounds appropriate, what are your thoughts?
Well, my feeling is that were Russia an actual democracy, in this case, I think, yes, war would be inevitable. You don't invest the kind of political and economic capital that's necessary to amass 175,000 troops and, posture before the world about we're going to do this if you don't kowtow to our demands. But it's important to remember Russia is not really a democracy. They have the trappings of one, but they don't really have a democratic system. So he can back off at any time, and by manipulating state press, simply convey the message to the Russian people and gullible folks all over the world that, oh yes, we emerged triumphant, we forced the West to kowtow to us, even though nothing has changed. And I keep going back, when I think about what's going on in Ukraine, to the old Clausewitzian maxim that war is politics carried out by violent means. And I think that's what's going on. This is Putin dealing with domestic Russian politics by trying to distract and shift the attention to the world stage. And I'll give you a sense of why I think that. Prior to this, Putin's polling numbers have been about 75 to 80% positive in Russia for the longest time. Within the past year to 2 years, it's declined to the point where it's in the 65 to 70%. Now, admittedly, to any Western politician, polling at 65, 70% is like, woohoo, I'm the best leader ever. But we're not dealing, again, with a true democracy or a Western state. We're dealing with Russia. That means he wants to shore up his position by appearing to be the strong man, the Stalin, if you will. And for a country that is now kind of repudiated the whole idea that Stalin was a horrible guy and is starting to say, oh no, he was a great guy, look what he did. Saved us from the fascists.
They renamed Leningrad. I've been in Leningrad when it was Leningrad. It's not Leningrad anymore. It's Stalingrad, and there's a reason.
Yeah. And so as I see it, what's going on is he's trying to secure his position and improve things. And the true risk isn't a popular uprising. You're not going to get the October 1917 revolution. That level of dissatisfaction doesn't exist. What you do have are all the other oligarchs who basically control, own, and run Russia. And you'll remember back in, I can't even remember when it occurred, probably around 2014, when all those sanctions were put in place. And you started seeing that there was a lot of, anger and resentment among those oligarchs who were the ones who were primarily being affected by it because they did so much business outside of Russia. And now that was all being cut into. So going to war and assuming Biden and the other Western leaders carry through on their threats of severe economic sanctions, that's going to go right back to that same situation and potentially result in a palace coup, ousting the glorious leader.
Now, that was actually the goal of the previous sanctions. It was not to hurt the Russian people, and it was not even to hurt Putin. It was to hurt his allies, and not in an attempt to get them to change his mind, but in an attempt to get them to assassinate him, if I recall.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it had quite the intended effect, because I think he made concessions to them with, okay, you can take over this a little bit, and you can do this, and I'll get rid of this annoying reporter who's revealing how corrupt you are and such.
There are people. Please
go ahead.
No, you please.
No, I was just going to say, I think the difference is with his numbers sinking and everything else going on, he's looking at trying to secure his position and thinks that those previous concessions and others like them are going to be good enough to buy off the hierarchy. But as much as we may despise the oligarchy in Russia, they're not stupid people. They're very smart, canny players. And I don't see them being the folks that go through the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on you routine. They're going to say, okay, second time, okay, I've got you marked. You're done.
So, what then is his end game here? Is he expecting that NATO is going to say, tell you what, pull your troops off the borders and we'll ease up some of the sanctions a bit? Or is it just, he ends up sort of giving up, he doesn't get anything, but again, through state media, he can sort of say he did get something, and he's just distracted everybody?
Well, backing down is a win-win situation in either form. If he backs down after getting those concessions, he's won because he can go back to the Russians and say, look, I forced the Westerners to concede all these things to us. Everything is wonderful. And if it doesn't, he can still have his spin doctors make him look like, the tough guy who stood up to the evil Westerners. I mean, some of the claims that are being made in the Russian media about, American contractors are smuggling in chemical weapons to support the Ukrainians and such. Nobody outside of Russia is going to believe that crap. But it works within the context of Russian politics. Now, I'm not going to come out and say point blank, no, they're not going to invade. I just don't see what that gets him if they do. Worst case, he's going to end up with, okay, you've invaded even though we told you not to. So suddenly you're in the same situation that Nazi Germany was after the Anschluss with Austria. It's like, okay, this is for real. He's going to keep doing this, and we need to start the buildup. And you start getting a lot more troops positioned into countries that he doesn't feel comfortable with, like Poland, like the Baltic states, etc., because they figure they're next.
But Ukraine has a large number of natural resources that, especially because of the sanctions, his people need. Is there any benefit to him to if he can snag it and if he can hold it, to then just saying, okay, I'll stop? Which, admittedly, that's what Hitler said, and he didn't. But if they build up then along these other countries where he's not planning on going, what then is this? It seems like he won in Crimea, right? I mean, he took Crimea, he's got it. Can he pull the same off with the Ukraine?
Potentially, but I don't think he really needs to. The main industrial base of Ukraine is in the Donbass region. So once he's already got that secured, I mean, yeah, they're still fighting, and he would benefit from the fighting going away so he can start, repairing all the infrastructure that's been destroyed. But that's part of it. That's where the coal fields are. The majority of the rest of Ukraine is really agricultural for the most part. Yeah, there are other industries. I'm not going to cover that over, but he's won the brass ring with what he's already got. And at this point, it's picking up loose change, I think, more than winning.
Yeah, the people that I hear talk about that are convinced that this is that Putin's being serious and intends to invade, they point out that he's not really going to take the whole country. He doesn't need to take all of Ukraine. That just needs to push through to the main river running north and south. And I have it written down here somewhere, but I can't find it. So that main river runs
the
through.
Dnieper or the Donuts, one of the two.
Yeah, it's the main one that runs north-south, comes right out through the, empties into through the Crimean Peninsula, and that all he has to do is move in essentially to that river, and he takes pretty much all of the productive part of Ukraine, the eastern half of the country, and secure that and stop essentially at the river to secure the river. That also secures, the upstream water supply to Crimea. So I mean, they're just pointing out that, hey, you got away with it, taking Crimea, and that, at least from a strategic point of view, because they want their wet base there, that it would make sense that they would want to secure the river going north of there, and that also conveniently gives them most of the fighting is also in the eastern part of Ukraine as well. That gives him not only does he have I'm just putting an end to all of this, rebel fighting that's going on, this chaos and civil war stuff going on, but it gives him most of the resources Ukraine has to offer, and he can just stop at the river, making the claim, hey, I was just taking over this region to, one, to protect ourselves, and two, to end all of this rebel fighting, because, you guys are threatening to come in with NATO and help try and fix this problem, and it's like, this is on our border, our backyard, and we're not comfortable with that. So they just keep pointing out that at least from a strategic point of view, that it would make, not counting the political aspect back home, just the strategic of, do we take this land or don't we? It seems
Sure,
to
but
make
it comes with a cost. It comes with a cost. Is he willing to pay that cost? Plus, there's the fact that once you secure that area, it's still going to be a significantly long time before it's truly secure. People forget that even though the Ukraine was liberated from the Nazis in 1944, there was an organized guerrilla movement, not pro-fascist, it was Ukrainian nationalists that continued fighting against the Soviet liberators until 1949, and there were still sporadic attacks occurring locally into the mid-50s. So you've now got a Ukraine that has again been reminded that it can realize true independence, being driven out of an area that almost assuredly there's going to be a separatist insurrection against Russia after it secures it. I just can't see that the benefit of getting more than he already has is worth the trade. But, I can't tell you how the Russian psyche works. I mean, I don't. Yeah, there's a definite element. Sure, there's a definite element of Russian paranoia, and that's what it is, about having buffer states all around Mother Russia because they've been invaded so many times. So securing Ukraine in that way is definitely something that has to be factored into the Russian agenda here.
And to be fair, the U.S. has historically kind of liked that too. I mean, the whole notion of spheres of influence. That's why we went into it. Now, not Vietnam wasn't necessarily a buffer for us, but we didn't like the idea of other countries expanding communism. So what, to the best of your knowledge, is the capacity of the Russian army? I mean, I've long considered it to be an army pretty much equivalent to any first world country. Sorry, not first world, to any superpower. Russia, or the Soviet Union, was a superpower. Russia was the largest state in that, so they are greatly diminished from that. But they obviously are a nuclear power. What are the capabilities of their army? Are they a modern army in the sense that we look at it? How intimidating are they? And can they capture that much of a country and keep it easily?
I think the best way to put that is that Russian army is in the process of modernizing. Much of it is still based on the old Cold War model, where the forces aren't well trained. That there's problems keeping them supplied and maintained. But Russia has begun fielding forces. I think it's about 1.5 to 2 corps equivalent right now of professional long-term soldiers with top-line equipment and adequate funds for training and maintaining their equipment. I think if they do go in, yeah, the Ukrainians are not going to be able to stop them from doing whatever they want. They'll annoy the hell out of them, probably, but I don't think they have the capacity to stop that level of force.
What other? I do know that I had thought that we had sort of exhausted all of our sanctions the last time around, and I looked into it some, and I unfortunately don't quite remember, but I do remember getting the distinct impression that there's actually still a great deal we can do. Are you familiar with what sanctions are on the table if they in fact go through with this, and what do you think the effects of those sanctions would be?
I don't think they have articulated specifically what those sanctions will be. They will probably go back to the I think 2017 is when Trump started repealing a lot of them. But before that, most of them were still in effect. And I think it's easy to just turn those back on, and they can probably do more. It's getting the international community on board to support and back those. And again, a direct military attack on an independent country without a plausible pretext, and as much as the posturing the Russians are going through, I don't think anybody buys all of that as an actual justifiable pretext. Without it, you're going to get a lot of people say, yeah, something needs to be done. They're going to look back at 38 and say, yeah, we're not going to have another Munich Accord appeasement. We're going to actually do something.
All right. So $2 super chat from Sinister Porpoise. Sinister, thank you so much again for your support. It's always very, very much appreciated. So $2 just to wish us a happy new year. So thank you very much, Sinister. Happy New Year to you as well. Hope you and your family stay at least as safe as possible. So let's see, where was so thank you for that. Is Andrew any thoughts?
Well, so what about the idea that I've also heard floated that he doesn't really intend to invade, but he's posturing to distract from the fact that he's funding quite a few of the Russian loyalists there in the east that are causing quite a lot of these problems, and that his real agenda is to de facto take over the area by just flooding it with enough of Russia's supporters that it might as well be his, even though he hasn't officially moved a military in there. Do you think that's got any merit?
Well, we already know that a significant portion of the Donbass independent movement, or whatever you want to call them, the pro-Russian faction, are actually not local residents of that area. They're military forces from Russia that have been kind of volunteered to go serve in the area. And there have been a lot of protests going on in Russia about, why can't I find out where my son is? Why haven't I heard from him in 2 years? I think he was killed in Ukraine. Oh, no, nothing of the sort. He's, living in Leningrad and is being a good boy and doesn't want to talk to you because you're liberal or something. So I think your idea that you floated there is definitely a potential, is that you secure formally those areas as a quasi-independent state and separate it on the international scene from the Ukraine. You say the Donbass is now the independent Republic of Donbass, or whatever you're going to say. The problem is the actual forces, not forces, but the people that are running those two regions, I can't remember the names. One is, it's like Donbass, but the other one starts with an L. I want to say Luhansk, but I know that's not right. Anyway, those two regions, they really don't get along with one another, so they're not going to unite. These are opportunist warlords who want their own little piece of the pie. But yeah, I can see Putin deciding to use them for his own purposes. I think that's a quite likely possibility.
There's a perception that, especially because of low poll numbers, that this may be kind of what inspired Putin to go now, was that Biden's poll numbers were going lower. A bit more of a political question, but if von Clausewitz is correct and war is simply politics by other means, then maybe it's apropos.
Well, it's a two-edged sword.
Yeah,
it's a political issue in this country as well. So if you want to make Biden look bad, you try to make him look weak on responding, why isn't he sending troops in to save Ukraine or whatever? So you're using that element of it too. You can't look at in a unitary, only Russia and the Ukraine. It's larger than that. It's larger than the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. It's everybody in Europe and adjoining regions.
So if you're Biden at this point, what do? Do you kind of just wait this out a little bit and see what Putin ultimately does? Do you offer him a little something to back down? What do you think? What do you think is the move here for Biden? Or let me rephrase that. I'm going to interrupt and rephrase that.
Sure.
Let's assume you were advising Biden yourself. What would you say to him?
That would be a different thing, but okay.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I'll go back to the first way I framed it then.
Yeah, let's stick with that. Anyway, I think you have to take a carrot and stick approach. You've already waved the big stick as best you can. And I think what you do is you start liaising, and we already have ties with the Ukrainian government and Ukrainian military. You say, okay, what do you need right now? And my guess is more Javelin anti-tank missiles, because they already have a bunch and they have been trained how to use them. So give them an advanced resupply. Stinger air defense missiles to try to keep, Russian aircraft and helicopters from pulverizing the almost non-existent Ukrainian Air Force, and so forth. But you find some way to back them, and then you kind of quietly backdoor to the Russians, say, look, we'll stop doing that level if you demonstrably back off and give us some reassurances that you're going to recognize Ukraine gets to be a independent state. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that does. And to me, that also, because my father used to have an expression: you can either do something or you can get the credit for it. And yeah, no, and I've realized every time I think about it, that's far more true than I ever thought. And what's interesting about it is if you really decide you want to overanalyze it, which I overanalyze everything. But if you really want to overanalyze it, it's usually, the people who want to get things done prefer that to the credit, and the people who want credit just want the credit. They don't care how it happens. So there's a lot of wheeling and dealing to go on there. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy didn't really need to accomplish anything, but he needed to make it look like he did because he was in a democratic country, and he needed to be able to win the people, which means it had to look like he had to get credit.
Yeah, he needed to validate his anti-communist credentials.
Yes. So he needed credit, but he didn't need to win. The credit was the win. But Stalin... Was it Stalin? Jesus, why my brain is
Khrushchev.
Khrushchev, thank you. It was Khrushchev. Wow. Khrushchev needed a win, and he couldn't. It didn't matter whether it looked like one because he had control of the media, as you said. But the people that backed him had to know for a fact that he won because he put it all on the line. It was all, and he could be dead if he lost. So it was over. He needed a win. That's it. Didn't matter what it looked like. Didn't matter about his pride. He needed a win, and that's what he got. The Jupiter missiles were removed from Turkey. 6 months later, the Soviet Union clearly actually won that engagement because it was a net loss for the U.S., but it looked like a win for Kennedy, who was riding high on that one afterwards. So one team got the credit, the other team actually got the win. So I've been wondering if that's sort of what's going to happen here, where we're going to see something. I don't think the stakes are nearly as high, but we're going to see something that kind of to us looks like a win to Biden, but Putin gets something that he can give to his people and say, hey, look. And so what you're saying about the carrot and stick approach makes some sense if in exchange for those assurances, the U.S. will make counter assurances that he needs and can tell his people. Maybe that'll be enough. I don't know enough about what. And I used to. The oligarchs, as you were mentioning, I think actually they really are the linchpin, because it's interesting to me that unofficially our policy is to get Putin assassinated and get him assassinated by his own people, and we're just trying to get them pissed off enough that one of them's willing to take the shot at it. And we've been trying to do that for some time.
For a guy who's a former KGB operative, I don't think that's likely to happen. I think he knows how to keep himself safe. It won't be an assassination. If it is, it's going to be a coup that takes him out. It'll just, private warlord troops and such.
Is it
securing?
True? Slightly different topic, but I'm curious. So,
Sure.
As I understand it, to the best of your knowledge, is it true that he's actually killed people with his bare hands? He wasn't a KGB operative. He was a KGB assassin, right? Yeah. Oh, what a nice guy. Real sweetheart. All right.
Delightful fellow.
Yes, sir.
And a fabulous dancer.
Well, and I mean, really has cojones like you want. I mean, I saw the footage of when he palmed the football ring. It was one of the championship ring. One of the NFL players let him see the ring, and the guy he liked it and just palmed it and kept it. It was like, what ring? It's just like, holy shit. Wow.
Well, that's also part of Russian culture, which is that if you go in and admire something, the host is almost compelled to give it to you.
I should visit Russia more often.
Well, when my dad went to Russia and visited his old KGB nemesis, it was the guy who literally we'd get transferred to a new country, and within about 4 months, Victor would mysteriously show up at some, diplomatic soiree or whatever. So after they both retired, he went and saw Victor, and he had to be real careful about not saying, oh, that's a really nice vase. Oh, here it is. You can have it. It's.
Well, yeah, I imagine there isn't a whole heck of a lot you can talk about, but that's very interesting. And as I said before, I mean, we'd like to get you back, to discuss a little bit more about your military experience. I think that's fascinating in general, but also certainly specifically about your involvement in the planning of the Iraq War and the naval naval planning for staging in Kuwait, because I think that's going to be an interesting topic. So there's a lot to discuss, and I would love to hear more about Victor. But all right, so moving on, is Andring, did you have any other questions that you wanted to hit, or you can sort of start to wrap this up? And
some of the questions I have now are just kind of like personal curiosity from some of the things that I've heard people talking about and floating around. Because I have heard, some people talking about that, one of the reasons that he's kind of making some of these moves is, again, the noted slight dip, I stress slight, dip in his approval ratings. And people are floating out the idea that since this is a state-run media and they have pretty much control over all this stuff, that slip is not truly reflective of the general people's actual opinions, and that his loss of popularity has actually gone down significantly more, and that he was worried about the possibility of a coup because there are people trying to take him out. And so that some of this stuff is, one, to get people's attention off of what's going on, in Russia itself, and also to try and redirect focus towards his strengths. and being strong on protecting Russia, the border states around Russia against NATO, and the fact that securing the eastern half of Ukraine would be beneficial militarily, at least in support of the Crimean Peninsula. And he's doing all this stuff specifically because he's worried about an attempted coup at some point. Do you think that that's a possibility, that's true, or is it just that it isn't quite as bad as that, and he may still be doing it for the same reasons, more or less, but.
Yeah, I think the numbers that we're seeing in polling stuff that's coming out of Russia is definitely skewed artificially. I think there is more anti-Putin thinking that is not being expressed openly. You're dealing with a country with centuries of history of you never speak your mind because the secret police will make you go away. But we know that some of that stuff is going on because we've seen video of, protests going on. We know that various opposition politicians and media, reporters and such, and human rights workers are being forced into internal exile or expelled from the country and such. So those aren't the actions of somebody who feels secure. So I think there is a lot of justifiable thought behind what you were just saying. I keep falling back onto the idea of Argentina in the Falklands, and I think it was 86. Why did they invade a place that had no economic value? It's because the junta was losing control, was having to face enormous amount of internal pressure from protest movements and such. So the quickest way to solidify national feeling behind an authoritarian government is to create an external crisis and go, oh, look, those nasty foreigners, we have to get them, they're evil.
Even turns out that works in democracies too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's very true in authoritarian regimes, and that's, I think, what we're seeing here to a large extent is that the actions that are going on have more to do with domestic Russian politics than they do with the international situation about NATO and the West expanding their influence into what Russia felt was its sphere of influence. I mean, it wouldn't be hard for Russia to adopt a much more gentle approach to lure the Ukrainians or Georgia or Azerbaijan or whatever back into the fold, so to speak. But they won't do it because that's not the Russian mental process.
And they still speak, Ukrainian, in the Ukraine, they actually do speak, the predominant language is Russian. And the culture is still in there, not that far removed from the former Soviet Union.
You got to remember, under Stalin's regime, speaking Ukrainian was a legally punishable offense. They were actively trying to eradicate the Ukrainian language, the Ukrainian cultural identity.
Well, so what it looks like, I think the consensus here then is that you do very strongly believe that this has very little to do with Ukraine, with anything external, and far more to do with Putin's numbers probably being significantly lower than they're actually being reported, and him trying to find a way to stabilize his position in power by doing something. And the question then isn't what is his motivation and what's this really about. The question is, how far is he going to take it? Is he actually going to make an invasion, or is this going to be enough for him to accomplish his goals? Is that a fair?
I think that's a very good assessment. I think it's for him, it's a calculated risk of how far to push it. It's brinksmanship, pure and simple. If I invade and just go for securing the rest of the Donbass region, is that enough that I can still win put that victory on, slap the victory on the walls of Paris, as they used to say about Napoleon. Can he do that to stabilize his position without thoroughly pissing off the West? And I think it's a matter of the West itself, with presumably Biden as the notional leader of the Western alliance, standing up to them in a way that is credible and believable and generates enough global sympathy for that position to stop him from doing anything. I don't know. I can't view into that prism.
The more that I hear people talk about, especially world politics, the more I learn about world politics, the more things that I witness, the older that I get, I am much less enthralled by the idea of some shadow organization such as the Illuminati behind the scenes pulling the strings for things. And I'm much more compelled by the theory that there's actually dozens and dozens of very small Illuminati-style groups, usually called state governments, that aren't playing 4D chess like it's supposed in all of the conspiracy theories, but rather they're playing hungry hippos with the power and money of the world.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
That is my new analogy for the upcoming years, that all world power politics is predicated on hungry hippos.
You've heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. It is the hungry hippo theory of world politics. I love it.
Brilliant. You're the new Clausewitz, dude.
So you need to write this.
Yeah, I could use that reference because everybody here is old enough to have remembered what hungry hippos was. So that's my step granddaughter, and she just gave me a blank look. And it's like, oh my God, you don't know what hungry hippos is? Oh, we got to find it. And then I couldn't even find one. Do they? I couldn't find one.
You don't need to. Now what you can do, two birds with one stone. Tell her, look, imagine 6 world governments. They're each colored different colors. And there's a whole bunch of marbles in the middle. 12. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the hungry hippo theory. Yeah, I think the Illuminati and those, and we actually, to tell you the truth, I think once or twice we had a guest either booked or coming on to discuss. Did we do a show on conspiracy? That's how bad yes, we did do a show on conspiracy theories.
We did a show on conspiracy theories, yeah.
Yes, we did, and that was I can't believe I've forgotten the philosopher, and he actually was an epistemologist, but he had studied conspiracy theories. But we didn't do anything on, and I was thinking of doing one on just sort of this the idea that there is one huge conspiracy that sort of runs everything, and it's actually got tremendous appeal. I understand the appeal of a theory like that, and I understand the appeal of being one of the few who can see through and see it. But it's I think the hungry hippo theory is far more realistic. I kind of wish it wasn't. I wish we had it in us to be able to do that kind of grand mastery, but no, we don't. We're not that clever, and we're all reasonably equal enough in skill that you end up with. And that's how evolution works. So
they think they're playing 4D chess when in reality they're struggling with mastering tic-tac-toe.
Yeah, or the one I always use is they think they're playing 4D chess when really they're eating the checkers.
That's interesting.
So
fine dinner mint.
All right. Well, so was there anything else you wanted to? We got a little time. We can also start to wrap it up anyway. So, what I wanted to make sure is, Andrew, that you got everything in. I think I got everything I wanted to ask. Except we did have a question, which is how old Putin is, and I honestly don't know. I was going to make
like it is your 70s.
Yes, and we can look it up. But I'm sorry. What was that, Andrew?
So I thought he was like in his late 70s. Isn't he just a little bit older than Donald Trump?
He was born in 52, so he's 4 years younger or older than I am. So he's 69 right now.
Yeah, I feel exhausted, and I'm not even 50 yet, which is why we get I haven't forgotten the pre-show is entering. This is we need to have when the credits are rolling, we need to have it muted in the back so that certain smart aleck co-hosts can't sit there and say that I make Noah look young. Just thank you for that. And I have a witness.
Hey, the reason that you put up with me is because at least I'm a smartass instead of just a dumbass.
A dumbass, yeah. Fair.
I think it also speaks volumes that he actually knows what Noah looked like.
I was saying earlier that he said that comment like 2 seconds before we went hot, so I didn't really have the chance to respond. Truth is, I would not have had a response that good. I wish that would have been good. That would have been really fucking good. Shit, you're gonna have to come back now. You're contractually. Okay. We're gonna find a way to force you back. We'll twist your arm.
I'll suffer through it at great personal sacrifice.
Yeah. So
it is a great personal sacrifice being on the air with Nick.
I don't know. I make people work for it. All right. Well, listen. Thank you very much. As I said before, and I want to. So we definitely want to have you back to discuss your experiences, because I think first of all you were in a unique position in assisting the U.S. military staging for the war in Iraq. But I also think that position, if I understand correctly, really did alter your perspective on the use of military in the United States, at least at that time. Whether that was a permanent shift or not, I don't know. But certainly enough that it's worth discussing. And I think all of us had concerns about the Iraqi war. And there were two of them. And I think many of us felt very differently about each of them. So I think that's a worthwhile discussion. You're in a unique position. So we'll set that up. That'll be a somewhat longer show. I think that'll be worth it. So I hope everyone listening will come in and check that out. So we'd like to do that in the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, as I said, over time, we're going to be keeping an eye on the fires and anything else. The COVID rates are just, it's breathtaking how bad that's getting, how quickly. And so we'll do what it takes to stay apprised of it and keep our audience apprised of it. We appreciate everyone who has been coming in to keep an eye on that, and that will also be on our Discord. So Discord is 24/7. There are people dropping stuff there as is needed, and you always find us up to date. Thanks to a great many people, especially Bregwin and a number of others who contribute. Maya contributes a lot too, but Bregwin certainly is the one who at 4 a.m. in the morning is the one dropping. So if you want to see what's going on in current, you'll usually find Bregwin will be the one keeping us up to date there. But thank you again, sir, for coming. We sincerely appreciate it. We appreciate your expertise and your sharing it with us. Thank you again. Thank you, 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐼𝐼, for joining us, and we look forward to
before you hang up on all of us.
Please.
I do need to highlight something out of the chat.
Yes, sir.
And the answer is to it before I read the comment. The answer to it is because I'm a very polite quasi-conservative. I know you don't think those exist, but I'm here. I am a polite quasi-conservative person. So the comment was, and of course, unlike other snarky people in the chat, 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐼𝐼 is less likely to interrupt Mr. $400 suitor.
I know. I get interrupted more by liberals than I do by the conservative on the group. That's really, yeah.
Never interrupt your opponent when they're making a fool of themselves.
Well, if that were true, you'd never interrupt me at all. You're not that quiet, but okay. All right. Well,
because occasionally you make a point that I have to say, yeah, you do have a point there.
that's what differentiates you. That's why I'm not sure you're a conservative, is because you actually admit when you're wrong. Yeah. All right.
Well, I don't think it does anybody good to deny facts, so.
Yeah. Well, that's never stopped most conservatives I've ever met, but like I said. All right. Well, before I say something that's really going to get me in trouble, thank you all again. So we have moved After Dark from Fridays to Thursdays. So After Dark would normally be in this time slot. We decided to move this time slot. I was unavailable Tuesday, so we just, for Commander McMillan, we moved to this time slot. We preempted After Dark. After Dark will be back next week at this exact time. In Time will be on its regular slot on Tuesdays, overtime on Wednesdays, and overtime also as needed, which is unfortunately, I suspect, is going to start being more and more frequently. So thank you all again for joining us. Thank you again, 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐼𝐼. Thank you, Commander McMillan. If I can get through this without being interrupted, because I am polite and I feel like I have to thank everybody, gee, that would be great, 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐼𝐼. Have a good evening, all. See you all next week. Welcome to In Time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. We read all of your comments, and if you like this video, please don't forget to share.